right, let's get to our Nancy Cortez again in Brooklyn. She is actually with Brian Fallon, the press secretary for Hillary Clinton. Nancy.
Thanks, Elaine. Brian, thanks for being with us here on CBSN. I want to ask you first about the tone of this debate. I know we're in New York City, but even by New York standards, that was pretty intense.
Well, look, the stage is bigger on New York. The spotlight shines a little brighter. I think Hillary Clinton handled herself well on that debate stage tonight. I think for Senator Sanders, unfortunately, in keeping with the sharp negative tone we've seen from his campaign in the last week, pretty much every answer that we heard from him was an attack line. I think it fell flat. At one point he was asked to name a specific instance where her contributions from the financial industry had supposedly compromised her, and he couldn't name a single instance. I think the biggest takeaway tonight, the biggest line of the night, will be her remark that it's not enough to diagnose the problem, you have to have a plan to do something about it. That, for us, has been the core contrast in this campaign. His inability to ever go beyond the diagnosis of the problem is what you saw in that Daily News editorial board meeting. And tomorrow on TV here in New York, we're actually going to go up with a new ad that highlights that endorsement that Hillary Clinton received from the Daily News, because we think that the story that was told in those two dueling interviews with the Daily News is really a core contrast between these two candidates. We think it's what that will decide this contest, not just in New York, but overall.
I can see the Sanders camp coming back at that and saying that actually in a few instances tonight it was Hillary Clinton who was unwilling to be pinned down on what she would do. He asked her, and the moderators asked her point blank, on fossil fuels, how far will you go? On Social Security, will you side with Senator Sanders? And in multiple cases she seemed to sort of wiggle out of it, leave the options open.
I look at it differently, Nancy. I think that the issue is that Hillary Clinton recognizes the nuance in these issues, and Senator Sanders frequently offers soundbite style solutions, but those aren't going to work in practice. So on Social Security, I think he's trying to create a disagreement where one doesn't really exist. Both candidates support expanding Social Security benefits, she for the most vulnerable populations. In terms of how they pay for it, he has specified he wants to raise the cap, Social Security taxes, above its current limit. Hillary Clinton has said she's open to that option, but she's open to looking at other options too. Bottom line, though, is she would pay for it one way or the other by making the wealthiest Americans pay more. So it's just a disagreement on the particular vehicle for that. But either way, at the end of the day, they both support expanding benefits and paying for it based on making the wealthy pay more.
You know, we've been talking on CBSN this evening about the Wall Street speeches and the debate between just releasing them, getting it behind you, and not having this issue come up again and again and again, or standing on what I suppose you would say is principle, that this is a new request that hasn't been asked of candidates in the past. Where do you come down on that debate?
So what she has said, and I think she's completely right in this point, is that there should not be a double standard for her. So if we're going to now make it a new rule that candidates will release their speech transcripts, that's fine. She'd be happy to do so.
But I'm not sure that Donald Trump or Ted Cruz have given any paid speeches.
They have. And actually, Donald Trump commands speaking fees that far exceed what Hillary Clinton was ever paid. And so that was my point in terms of a double standard. On the Democratic side, you have Bernie Sanders, who's not even releasing more than a year's worth of tax returns. We heard him tonight commit to releasing 1 year's worth. That is going to be far below the standard that is expected of a serious presidential candidate. If he wants to be taken seriously and meet the standard, the norm that presidential candidates adhere to, he need to do more than 1 year. So we're going to, if that's all he puts out tomorrow, we're going to, I think, continue to stress that he needs to do more than just that 1 year. And that is a default standard that every presidential campaign abides by every 4 years. He's not even doing that, so it's somewhat galling for him to be making an issue of transcripts, which is a new standard that presidential campaigns are apparently being held to, versus taxes. For Donald Trump's part, he's given paid speeches for years, in excess sometimes of $400,000 in terms of what he was commanding in speaking fees. If he's going to release transcripts, then maybe that will indicate that we have a new standard across the board, and Hillary Clinton will be happy to participate in that. But with both Senator Sanders and Donald Trump, you have people setting two different sets of standards for themselves.
The Sanders camp says no matter what happens here in New York, even if he gets beaten, they are staying in this race all the way through to the end, all the way through to June 14th in the District of Columbia, and possibly even till the convention. How does that change things for your campaign?
It doesn't change it one bit. We've now gotten used to the idea that he's going to be in this race all the way to the end. He's certainly shown an ability to raise the money to do that. He's certainly got a high level of enthusiasm from his supporters. And Hillary Clinton, of course, in 2008 stayed into the very end. So we'd be the last people to say that he should drop out of the race. Not at all. But I think two things. Number one, I think that we're going to be able to clinch the nomination well before the end of the voting as a result of achieving a majority of the pledged delegates as well as a majority of the superdelegates together. I think that between that and the fact that she has won more states and the fact that she leads in the popular vote by right now 2.4 million votes, I think by every metric she's outperforming Senator Sanders. So he will remain in the race probably all the way through June, but I'm not sure what the articulation of the path will be for him very much longer. And secondly, I just think that for as long as he stays in the race, no one should fault him. But I do think he has something of an obligation to keep the tone civil and issue-oriented, which is the way we started out this campaign, and we'd like to get back to that.
On that point, my final question, do you see tonight as kind of a clearing of the air, or is this the new tone of the campaign?
I hope it's not the new tone of the campaign. The Sanders campaign today, in the person of Mr. Devine, has suggested that this is sort of a unique tone that they've been taking these last few days because they felt it was necessary to pass a credibility test here in New York. That somehow New York is inherently a little bit more of a brawl, and so they felt like they had to bring that kind of tone here to be taken seriously among New York Democrats. I hope that this is a one-off and that after New York is over, when we campaign in states like Pennsylvania and the rest of the Mid-Atlantic region, that we can return to an issue-oriented debate. That's going to be our strategy. I hope that the Sanders campaign will take a page from that book.
Brian Fallon, Clinton Press Secretary, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Elaine?
Nancy, thank you so much.